a young couple went on a date, and they decided to go to a football game. At this point, the girl had never been to a football game. The man was super excited, got 50-yard line seats right behind the team's bench. He was super excited. So after the game, he said, "So, what did you think?" And the girl said, I liked it, I really did, but I don't understand why they were killing each other over 25 cents. Dumbfounded, the guy says, 25 cents? I'm not sure I know what you mean. Well, at the beginning of the game, they flip a coin, one team takes it, and for the rest of their game, they're shouting, "Get the quarterback, get the quarterback." I tell that joke because my dad used to tell me that joke, and it always filled my heart with laughter. And that's the first time I've actually said it without laughing. How many times have we heard that joke? Quite a few. But it's one of my favorites. You know, we talk about laughter being the best medicine, and a day without laughter is wasted. Laughter is the shortest distance between two people. We even came up with LOL, laugh out loud. Laughter is a gift from God. And most laughter isn't about humor. It's about a relationship between people. We know a baby's laugh. You know, we can laugh before we even speak. And there's nothing sweeter than the baby's giggle. Today our text is Hebrews 11:11. By faith, even Sarah was past childbearing age. She was unable to bear children because she considered him faithful, whom had made the promise. When Paul shared these stories, he was saying them to encourage you, encourage us. Maybe some of those already knew these stories. Hebrews 11:1 says, "Now faith is confidence in what we do not see." By faith, we understand that the universe was formed. These are all to show us to trust in God. That faith is our firm foundation upon everything above it is from him. And these aren't just stories that we hear in Sunday school, or the song that was in my head all week is Father Abraham had many sons. Remember, we would march and you do all these fun motions? That song was in my head all week. God had a purpose for these stories. I think to challenge us to think bigger, a God perspective. We don't understand. And sometimes they even seem abnormal or far-fetched, like fictitious people. Like Sarah being 90? I can't imagine. So what does God want us to learn from Sarah? Sarah was submissive. She was loyal. She loved her husband. She ached for a child. She looked to the future with hope and even laughter. We find Sarah's story in the book of Genesis, and there is a lot of stuff in Genesis. So trying to point out where we should start wasn't easy, but I think we'll start chapter 12. We are told that Sarai was beautiful. Even God told Abraham and Sarah to go to Egypt, and Abram asked Sarai to lie. He concocted this story to keep him safe from Pharaoh. He had Sarai lie for him and say she was not his wife, but his sister. And Abram was right. He did give him gifts. Pharaoh gave him sheep, cattle, male and female servants. And then the Lord protected Sarah. He protected her by giving Pharaoh and his home illnesses. And because of this, she was able to return to Abram. God had a big plan for her. In chapter 13, we see that Abraham does become incredibly wealthy. And I like to think that maybe Sarah and Abraham at this point maybe actually started working together as a team. You know, maybe they just kind of found their groove at this point. Sarah submitted to him, and by doing so, Abraham's life was spared. What deeper bond is that? You save your husband's life? And then we continue in chapter 15. Abram is completely aware of his wealth, and he knows that God promised him a child. Where is this child? No child. So he's starting to get concerned. He's asking, okay, so is it going to be my servant? Is my servant going to be my heir? And God says in verse 4, no. This man will not be your servant. The servant will not be your heir. Well, who will it be? I imagine the tension growing between Abram and Sarah at this time. No child? How many sleepless nights or month after month not having a child, even though God said you will have a child? How many times did they go to bed angry? How many times did they argue and squabble? So that leads us to Sarah in chapter 16. I'll read that. This is where she has her servant. She gives her servant to Abraham, and he gladly accepted. Well, we're not told he gladly accepted, but we are told that he did it, so. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay, now Sarah, Abraham's wife, had no children. She had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my servant, and I can build a family through her." Abram agreed. He slept with Hagar, and she conceived. I think her motive was love. I do. I'm not sure if that's what I would do. But I think her motive was love. She loved her husband. And I also believe she loved God. Like, okay, God, you promised this. Let me kind of take it in my own hands because you're a little slow. We're talking 35 years slow, right? But I think her motive was love. She loved Abram. And I think she wanted a child. Back in those days, being barren, that was shameful. And she does make a mess of things, doesn't she? I think she causes our first love triangle. There was shame, hurt, blame, jealousy, were all the motivating factors. She is so mean to Hagar. Sarah is so mean to Hagar that Hagar runs away. And I love that God didn't just stop and say, well, you're just the slave. I don't have to give you a promise. But he does. He promises Hagar that she will be protected and her son will be safe. But he also commanded her. He commanded her to go back. He commanded her to go back where she was mistreated, where she wasn't shown love. And we really don't know what happened after that. Was there peace between Sarah and Hagar? We don't really know. In chapter 17, God again confirms the covenant and changes Abram to Abraham. And this is where he changes Sarai to Sarah. And I tried to practice saying Sarai and Abram in the beginning of this before, and I kept messing up. So I thought I'm just going to say it, Abraham and Sarah. That's how I learned it. So notice how Abram in chapter 17, I closed it. You would think I would remember it's in the first book of the Bible. Okay. 15:16. God also said to Abraham, as far as Sarai, your wife, you are no longer to call her. Her name will be Sarah. I will bless her and will surely give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of people will come from her. Abram fell face down and he laughed. He laughed. Notice, and then a few verses later, he talks about Ishmael. Can't this just be Ishmael? I already have this son. Can't he just be the one giving the blessings? God says, no. Sarah will bear the children. And I think God is just reminding us that his plan didn't change. He knew exactly. Can I just talk loud enough? Can y'all hear me? Oh, you can't hear me, can you? This is like the 10th time it's fallen down. I should wear a headpiece like Leary. I even told Barb that I'm not as animated as Leray and it would be fine, but it didn't work that way. Okay, sorry. So Abraham's laughing, right? He's laughing. He falls face down. Lord, let me just do it this way. Let's just use Ishmael. Sarah's old. I'm old. He's 100 years old at this time. Do you think that maybe they both laughed because after Hagar conceived a child, there's major tension between the two of them? I have the privilege of working with married couples that come in for a life skills intensive, and man, sometimes you can feel the tension just sitting in a room getting their intake information. So I imagine Abraham laughed because he's thinking, we don't even sleep in the same room anymore. How is she ever going to conceive? We don't even like each other. We're not talking to each other. What? This can't happen. This isn't going to happen. Chapter 18, 3 men appear outside of the tent. When Abraham saw them, he ran to them. He knew who that was. And in his anxiousness and surprise, he's, Sarah, you got to go make bread. So he commands her to make bread. And I think that excitement, Sarah was thinking, what are they talking about? Who is this? Because we're never told that God gave Sarah the promise, only that he gave it to Abraham. So the men ask, where is your wife? Where is your wife, Sarah? Well, she's in the tent. I think her ears perked at that point. She laughed to herself, how will I have this pleasure? Because the men say, a year from this point, Sarah will have a son. And Sarah heard that, and she didn't laugh out loud. She didn't LOL. She was listening, but she laughed within herself. So the only one who could know that would be God. How will I have this pleasure? What pleasure she's speaking of? They're not talking. Maybe she misses Abraham and there's something missing between them in their marriage. Is that why she chuckled? Or is it because she was 90? I believe God didn't just heal her or give her a child. I believe he had reconciliation for their marriage. That was a new start for both of them and made them mother and father of all nations. Is there anything too difficult for the Lord? Abraham was asked, why did your wife laugh? Is there anything too difficult for the Lord? You know, this question is asked and answered so many times throughout the Bible. It's in Jeremiah, it's in Luke, Matthew, Philippians. This is certainly a promise worth repeating. Maybe Sarah needed to hear God speak. You know, it was only Abraham that we have recording that who was told. Sarah did bear a son, and his name was Isaac, just as God said. And this is allergies, so I'm really sorry. She did bear a son. They named him Isaac. God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears this will laugh with me. She knew this was crazy, ridiculous, so big that only God could do this. And I can also imagine the women going together to get water in the morning, right? They draw water together. Sarah's expecting at 90. That's crazy, right? We would all be laughing at that. I think it's crazy at 50. I can't imagine wanting a baby at 90. God didn't just say, here's your son. She got to live long enough for him to be 37 years old. God didn't just give her, okay, this is what I wanted. No, he wanted her to have a son, one that she loved and watched grow. Sometimes when I heard these stories growing up, or even as a young adult, these are great stories. Nicole, this is great. God could do this for you. God could do this for you. Not for me. I doubted. I carried a lot of shame. And does God really want to give us the desires of our heart? I asked that question many times to myself. In my dining room, I have a little knick-knack that says, I still remember praying for all the things I have now. So I prayed. I prayed for a home, a house that would actually feel like home for me. I moved so much growing up. I wanted my kids to be happy, healthy, strong, independent adults. Well, they are that. The independence, they take a little too far. But they are 25 and 24. And I ever thought, if I got married again, I'm going to marry my best friend. I wasn't going to allow abuse, confusion to define me anymore. And all these answers to prayer didn't come just like that, or even the way I expected or wanted. And sometimes, God even told me no. So 16 years ago or so, my life was going crazy. And it was actually at the Sickles household that God gave me these verses. And it wasn't long after that I printed them out and put them on this paper. I don't know if you can see it from there, but this paper has lots of Scotch tape, and I even ripped it once. I will always show you where to go. I'll give you full life in the emptiest of places. Firm muscles, strong bones. You will be like a well-watered garden, a gurgling spring that never runs dry. You'll use the old rubble of past to build anew. Rebuild the foundations from out of your past. You'll be known as the one who can fix anything. Restore old ruins, rebuild and renovate. Make the community livable again. That's the message in Isaiah 58. At the time, I didn't really know what this meant. The only one that I actually figured out is that God would show me where to go. And even though God gave me this promise when I asked and prayed for it, I didn't stand to it. I didn't choose to trust him. Even though these verses, if someone said, what are your life verses? This would be one of them. But I didn't live this out. I, like Sarah, I thought I knew better. Let me just take this in my own hands, and I get to choose how my story ends. I just kept grasping at things. Well, maybe this will work. Well, this didn't work out, so I'm going to go over here. Maybe this will work. And just like Sarah, I made a mess. I hurt people. I hurt people I loved and cared about. And the very first time I was called into ministry, I was a teenager at teen camp in West Des Moines, Iowa. And who would have thought that because I said no, I'm not going to go to Mid-America. No, I'm going to get married. No, I want to have kids. Oh, teaching Sunday school will be enough. God didn't change his purpose for my life. No matter how nervous I am, I know he has a plan for me. And so what have I learned from Sarah? God's timing is always perfect. And when God says no, or not yet, because he didn't tell Sarah no, just not yet, doesn't mean he isn't in it. He has something for us. And this is one of my favorites, when we mess it all up. God doesn't hold it against us. We just need to turn around and point to him, and he will direct your path. So what is it that you need God to do? Is it a job? Is it healing a marriage? Hebrews 11:39 says, these were all commended by faith, for faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better, for only together with us would be made perfect. With us is the Holy Spirit and Jesus. Every example of faith given in chapter 11 is to solidify the message of God's love and mercy. God truly did have something planned better for me, just like he does for all of us. But I pray that you'll be a little smarter than me. So I tell my kids, yep, you're right, I did that, but I pray you won't. Because he has something bigger and better for each of us. Let's pray.